So welcome to Game 3, and as you all know, we have Mr. Walt Power here. There's been a late rush of entries for you, Walt, so that's fantastic. So I think, given that I'm a couple of minutes late, and I apologise for that, technical difficulties, as I said, we'll get straight into it. So we'll run a couple of polls to begin with. So Victoria, just throw up the first poll, and let's find out where everybody is. All right, that's an easy one for me. So everybody just click on where they're from, and we can have a look and see who we've got here and where most of our crowd, our audience are from. So I think Victoria, give it another 3 or 4 seconds, and then we can throw it up on the screen.
People are still voting.
Are they? All right, let's give them a few more seconds to vote. How many have you got, Victoria? How many participants do we have here? 67. How many have you got in, Victoria? At least 50?
Let me see, it's like around 20 something have voted.
So you should be able to see a poll up on your screen in front of you. You can click on where you're from.
Yes. You want me to share the result now?
Yeah, let's share it now. Wow, a lot of other. Now, isn't that interesting? 31% of other. I thought I covered everything with Macau and the Philippines and Singapore and Korea, Vietnam, Japan and mainland China. That's interesting. So there must be people here from Europe and America and maybe Saipan and places like that. So that's interesting. So that didn't tell us too much. Let's put the second one up then, since we're going to talk about Macau today. The second poll is an interesting one. It's just a straight yes/no question. Put that up, Victoria. There you go. Have you ever lived or worked in Macau? And since Walt's going to be talking about Macau, well, I can put yes. I'm in Macau right now. Lived here for 11 years. Let's just give that maybe 15 seconds, Victoria, for people to vote. And then, Walt, as you're speaking, you'll be able to know whether you're talking to a Macau audience or a non-Macau audience.
Great.
There we go, 70-30 roughly. So 70% have lived or worked in Macau. So a fairly Macau knowledgeable audience. Okay, well let's move on. So when Walt suggested to me the topic of this little talk today, the 5 paradigms that are wrong about Macau, I thought, you know what? Don't tell me what they are. We'll do it in the event, so we can all be a surprise to me. So I don't even know what these 5 are. So Walt, I think I'll hand it over to you, and maybe if we can do 3 or 4 minutes on each, and leave it to you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, and thanks for everyone for joining. I really want to start off by congratulating Andrew and Ben on the game series. I know how popular it's been, and I appreciate it. And I'm honored to be selected to join today. With your permission, Andrew, I'd like to start off with a short anecdote, which is related to my topic. 35 years ago, I was a young Marine Corps aviator, and I was sitting in the ready room preparing for a flight. The ready room is a briefing area where you find out which aircraft you're going to be assigned and where you're going to fly. And I was just waiting for my flight, and I picked up a random magazine that was next to me on my couch, and it was an aviation safety magazine. And I was flipping through it very casually, and I came across in bold print, highlighted, a quotation. And the interesting thing with the quotation was attributed to Anonymous. Well, this quotation stayed with me for the last 35 years, and one of the things that really stayed with me as far as my business career in the casino industry. And the quotation went something like this: in any profession of honor, there is a hierarchy created solely on competence. In any profession of honor, there is a hierarchy created solely on competence. So what did it mean back then when I was at the Marine Corps Air Station New River? Well, what it meant back then was that it didn't matter if you were a first lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, or colonel. Didn't matter how many flight hours you had, if you had 500 or 600 or 2,000. Everyone in that squadron knew who the best pilots were. And everyone knew, without saying it, who what was called the good stick and rudder men, or to put it another way, men that had the right stuff. a term that was coined by Thomas Wolfe in the book of the same name. You may have seen the movie, one of my favorites. So how does that relate to my topic today? The way I look at it, I don't care if and I'm hoping the audience is a young pit manager from Macau or a young cage shift manager in Singapore, or maybe it's someone that's transitioning to the casino industry and is going to be working in international marketing. If you're curious enough, if you're skeptical enough, and you believe in the scientific method, odds are you're going to know more than your contemporaries, and probably you're going to know more than your bosses do. I've selected these 5 false paradigms based on really one criteria. What have I heard gaming company CEOs say, gaming company CFOs say, sell side and buy side analysts say, journalists say, that they were sure was true about the gaming industry, but quite frankly was completely wrong. So the purpose of my talk today is really not necessarily to educate you on these 5 areas, but just to prove to you that there are a lot of false paradigms. And if you dig into the issues that you're interested in, and you don't take yes for an answer, you can learn a lot about this industry and be one of the leaders of this industry. So let's start with number 1. I've heard this over and over and over again. It's a very basic one, and most of you will say, well, I knew that. But I can assure you that there's a lot of people that don't know that and don't believe that. And that number 1 thing is rolling chips cannot be cashed in. Rolling chips or non-negotiable chips cannot be cashed in. I hear that all the time. And guess what? That's false. When you're playing as a VIP player direct with the casino, or you're even playing as a VIP player under the junket, therefore using rolling chips, when you put up your front money at the start of your session, you receive non-negotiable chips. And that's recorded actually as your initial roll. And then you play and you get cash chips for your winning bets, etc. You roll the chips where you get more non-negotiable chips. But then when you're finished, you may have some non-negotiable chips left. And you just give those non-negotiable chips back to the junket operator or back to the casino, and you're paid back for those chips. There might be some Damajai organizations, Damajai agents in Macau that insist that the player, you have to play these chips. But that's not how the casinos work in Macau, and that's certainly not how the big junket operators work in Macau. Second paradigm, tricking the customer leads to maximizing EBITDA. What does that mean? I've heard over and over and over again from industry experts and senior executives that, for example, we don't want to put too many TV stations on the TV in our casino because we don't want them watching TV. We want them down the casino. Or we want the temperature at this level because it'll keep them in the casino. No clocks, no mirrors in the casino because we want to keep them on the table games. I would submit to you that's completely ridiculous. If you study the casino industry, you'll see that there's physiological effects and psychological effects that make gaming attractive. If you want to study one thing physiological about gaming, study the hormone called dopamine. Dopamine is what's referred to as the learning hormone. And what it is you get a shot of it in your brain when you see something new. You see something different. And from a long-standing evolutionary standpoint, when you see something different, you might be able to spot danger, or you might be able to spot a new food source. So that's ingrained in our brains over hundreds of thousands of years. So in a casino play, when you're winning a bet, losing a bet, winning a bet, losing a bet, every time the cards are uncovered, you get a shot of dopamine. And that's what drives the casino. The gaming takes care of itself. You don't have to trick the customer. I would fall back on a quote, a great quote I heard, I believe it's from Steve Wynn. And he said, I don't care if the player wins, loses, or draw. All I want to know is that he had the best time of his life. And I would submit to you, I feel the same way. The third paradigm. There's a mathematically calculated spread between minimum bet and maximum bet that maximizes profitability in the casino. In other words, if the minimum bet is $100, the maximum bet should only be, for example, $10,000. If the guy wants to bet $50,000 a hand, he has to play on a table with a minimum of $5,000 a hand, something along those lines. As a corollary to that paradigm, something goes along the lines, I'm not going to allow the guy to bet $50,000 unless he checks in $200,000 or something along those lines. Now, both of those assumptions, both of those conclusions are dramatically false. And I've had gaming company CEOs believe that to be true. And I'll ask you two questions or make two statements to prove to you very quickly that those statements are not true. Number one, the more chips that are bet in a casino on the long term, the more win the casino is going to generate. Right? That's a truism for sure. The more chips that are wagered, the more money on the long term the casino is going to make. Secondly, the more bets at the same level reduce volatility. The same number of bets, or the more the bets at the same level, it reduces volatility. That's certainly true as well. So if you're trying to stop any player from betting X because he doesn't do Y, and you have other casinos in that same casino betting X, you're obviously restricting his betting. So therefore, you're reducing the amount of money he's wagering, which goes against my first point. And number two, you're reducing the number of bets at that level. Let's say it's 50,000 in a casino. And so you're actually increasing volatility by making those restrictions. I would point to my friend Andrew McDonald from Marina Bay Sands and Sands, China. I believe he might have been the first one in Macau where he raised all the maximum bets on the table games, both on VIP and on the mass levels, to the same level. If I'm not mistaken, it was 2 million a hand. He realized that you don't want to restrict a player from making a wager if you have other players making those same wagers. I would just, along the same lines, all the minimum bet does is kind of spread out the players among tables. If you have a crowded table and you want to make room for a bigger player, then increase a minimum on a new table, and that'll reduce the number of players on that table. But that's all you're doing. You're just spreading the players and giving the bigger players some more elbow room. And on the other side, your max bet is basically just determined by how much money you have in the cage, how much volatility you're willing to absorb, and what's your timeline for absorbing that volatility. Just as a little trivia question, I'm always asked, what's the worst case scenario from the casino's perspective? What's the worst case scenario for a player on a weekend? Because in Macau, players typically show up on a Friday afternoon, they leave on a Sunday afternoon. Well, I could go into a longer mathematical equation, but I can tell you that it pretty closely resembles 40 times the max bet. If you're going to let a player bet 2 million a hand, let's say Hong Kong, that player can theoretically beat you for about 80 million on a weekend. And you have to be prepared to pay him if he beats you. Now, that's a case if there's only one player playing at that level. If there's 50 players playing at that level, it's a completely different equation, and the volatility is much less. But I can tell you when casino owners, executives, CFOs are worried about players beating the casino, I go back to my own personal experience. I know a lot of casino players over almost 30 years in this business, and I know a lot of casino industry veterans who know a lot of players, and no one has ever been able to identify a casino player who's sitting on a beach in Thailand and saying, I was such a great gambler, I'm glad I quit when I was ahead. The mathematics takes care of itself. The fourth paradigm, the Macau gaming market is homogenous. I hear over and over again from, buy-side analysts, bankers, investment bankers, journalists. They ask me the question, who is the Macau player? What do they do for a living? Where do they get their money from? How long do they stay? My goodness, I think before the virus hit, we had an annualized visitation rate of about 30 million customers, 30 million visitors to Macau, something along those lines. In my mind, there's 30 million stories. It's maybe best described as a bell curve, but along that bell curve is 30 million points, and each point has a different story. That actually points to another side issue, related issue, and that relates to premium mass. Premium mass is misused, in my opinion, today. There is no such thing as a segmented premium mass. You know, years and years ago in Vegas, 50 years ago, there was always something called the high limit area. When I opened up the Sands in 2004, we had the high limit area, which basically could be described as a segregated area with a balustrade around it, with higher minimum bets and sometimes higher maximum bets. Most people think that that is premium mass. And to a certain extent, I would agree with them. But let me ask this question to you, or let me make this statement to you. Walking through the Venetian a couple of years ago, I was no longer working there. I was walking through their mass gaming floor. And I spotted a guy who was obviously a big player. And I watched that player bet 2 million Hong Kong on a random table with cash chips in the middle of the Venetian mass gaming floor. Now, I would certainly, under any definition, consider him a premium mass player. But that being said, he wasn't playing in this segregated area with this balustrade around it. Premium mass, in my view, is simply a marketing term that casino owners and CFOs, financial analysts use to describe a segment of the market where the bets are higher, and of course, by definition, the margins will be higher. And that's really all that it is. My fifth paradigm, and actually, Andrew, I got a couple extra bonus paradigms if we have time. When I first started, I was afraid I was going to only have 5, and I ended up with 7 or 8. So I'll keep on going. The fifth paradigm is that the casino always wins. The casino always wins. Let me tell you, the casino doesn't always win. With bad management, with wrong maximum bets, with not enough money in the cage, with too many big players visiting you, the casino can lose. Now, it's just a matter of your time frame. And I'd like to share with you a statistic, trivia point, which many of you that know me already know, because I think it's very enlightening. And that talks about, when are you sure that the casino is going to win? How many bets do you need to be sure that the casino is going to win? Now, I ask this question, I pose it a little bit differently when I speak at conferences, and I say, let's say you were the CEO of Tram, and you had a big player that wanted to come in on the weekend from Ho Chi Minh. He was from Korea, and he wanted to bet 50,000 US dollars every single hand. But I want this player because I want to please my bosses and maximize my profitability. The problem is I have no money in the cage to pay him if he wins. So if he stops playing and he's $1 ahead, I go bankrupt and I'm out of a job. So the question I have for the audience today is, how many wagers will you require of this Korean player, 50,000 every single hand, for you to be, let's say, 99% sure that you're break even or above this guy when he stops? Because if he stops $1 ahead, you're bankrupt. Again, the question basically is, how many hands do you require of the same bet to be 99% sure that you're break even or ahead of this guy? And I ask this question all the time at conferences, and I get answers like 20, 100, 150, 300. And you know what the answer is? 60,000. 60,000. You would have to require this one player, if he was the only player betting 50,000 a hand, you would require him to play 60,000 hands for you to be 99% sure that you're break even or ahead of this game. Now that sounds pretty crazy. You're probably thinking to yourself, no way, Walt, your mathematics is wrong. But look at another way. Let's say you're on the high limit area at the Venetian in Macau. And you say, let's say over the course of 24 hours, you have 300 players walk into that casino, some in the morning, some in the afternoon, most of the night, 300 players. And let's say they're all playing about the same amount, more or less. Look what happens in that case. The average, you have 300 players. The average player in Macau plays for 4 hours a day. And the casino deals baccarat approximately, to make the math easy, 50 hands an hour. Do the quick math on that. 300 times 4 times 50. What do you get? 60,000. So if you go into any big casino in Macau and you walk up to a shift manager or pit boss and you ask them, how many days a month is a premium mass result negative? And their answer will always be 0. Now, if you go into that same person and say, how many days a month is VIP negative? And they'll say 2 or 3 days a month. They'll never be negative for the whole month, but 2 or 3 days, because they don't have that volume, they'll be negative. They have to make up for it for the rest of the days of the month.
Well, that's your fifth, Walt.
That's my fifth one. That's my fifth one. Yep.
We don't have enough time, so I want to make just a couple of quick comments, ask you a quick question, then hand over to Ben for the questions.
Okay.
So a couple of things came to mind when you were talking there. I'll always remember, just a very quick comment because we're short of time. When I used to play, some of you may be aware, I used to play blackjack in Australia many decades ago, and I would see tables with spreads. And then I first walked into Caesars in Las Vegas in the early 90s. And I noticed exactly what you mentioned, that it was a US $10,000 maximum on whether it was a $100 table, a $25 table, or a $5 table, the maximum was 10,000. I remember getting a real shock because I'd never seen that before, but somebody had done the same thing as what you mentioned, Andrew McDonald did. I mean, I guess one issue is around security, right? If you have a table that's 5 to 500, you pretty much can tell surveillance. You don't really need to watch that table. Maybe not exactly, but you know what.
Andrew, not exactly. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust you. I don't even trust myself.
Well, there's still chips in the float, aren't there? And I mean, you mentioned about casinos losing. I mean, there's quite a few examples of casinos losing, isn't there? And through bad management. I mean, we only need to go to Atlantic City and our glorious president in the US to get a few. But also, there's a few other famous examples. MGM and Darwin, when they took on a big player that they shouldn't have taken on. Even when Kerry Packer famously went to MGM in Las Vegas in the last few days of the quarter and ruined all the bonuses for that quarter of the serious management there. But Walt, I wanted to ask you just one question before handing over to Ben for question time. And that is, obviously you're down at Ho Tram now. We've all heard of Ho Tram and all the difficulties it's had over the years and so forth. Just a general open question for you. I mean, what are your plans down there now that you're in charge?
Yeah, well, just in general, I've been here a little over 3 months now, and I'm pretty excited about what's happening here. What I bring here is 17 years from Macau, and Macau is without question the most professionally run sophisticated, most analyzed gaming jurisdiction in the world. And as you alluded to earlier, Andrew, management does matter. I had a board member one time ask me, "Oh, isn't casino management homogenous? Isn't it a commodity?" Well, and I said, "Well, look at the 6 concessionaires in Macau. If gaming management, if leadership was a commodity, they'd all be doing the same, and they're not." So, as you know, we were talking about a little bit before we started here, bringing the same philosophies, the strategies, the quality of management that we find in Macau to Tram. That's an important part. I've always contended that all great things are only done by great teams. Sometimes one person gets a credit, but I can assure you that there's a great team behind them. We're focusing primarily on the expat community in Ho Chi Minh, as opposed to the overseas market, which kind of fits in well with what's happened to us recently. There's a very large Korean expat community in Ho Chi Minh because of the large amount of FDI, foreign direct investment in Vietnam. I think the number the number is upwards of 100,000 South Korean expats, and these people are all business owners, company executives, CEOs, auditors, lawyers, et cetera, and so that's what we're going after. Finding individuals who can target those particular segments. For example, finding someone that can target that Korean segment in Ho Chi Minh, someone that can target the Chinese subsegment in Ho Chi Minh, which is also significant. Someone going after the Viet Q, which are Vietnamese citizens who have dual passports, which are allowed to play in our casino. So just by changing the strategy, coming up with a strategy and executing it aggressively, that's what I'm looking for more than anything. I do want to shout out on the Vietnamese government. They've been extremely supportive, especially during this COVID period. Without going into great detail, I think we might have been maybe the only profitable casino on the whole planet over the last couple of months. So and that's directly due to the support of the Vietnamese government. They see tourism as a driver of their GDP, and we're the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you've been open all this period, and you've had probably some captive audience there as well in terms of Koreans stuck in Vietnam, which would have been useful actually, if anything.
Yeah, for sure, of course, yeah.
Yeah. All right, we better keep moving on because we try and keep these things short. So I'm just going to throw up one quick poll that I got Victoria to do before. Victoria, put that third poll up. I'm interested to see what the votes on that are. So what do you know about Ho Tram? You never heard of it, or you've heard of it, but that's it, or you know a few things about it, or you know a lot about it? Just I'll let everybody vote. I'm just curious to see the level of awareness, because it did get a lot of press about a decade ago, but it's been quite quiet the last year.
Yeah. I would say, Andrew, too. I see a lot of my friends are on your game webcast. I can see a lot of friends there. And I just want to do a shout out. Anybody that wants to come visit Ho Tram, please send me a note. And I'd love for them to be my guest.
That's great. So Victoria, maybe put the results up there. I'm just curious to see how much awareness in this day and age there is. Oh, okay. So quite a fair bit. A good 70% know about it somewhat or substantially. So there's a bit of a story to be told. Well, maybe Walt will do a story in Inside Asian Gaming in 6 or 9 or 12 months. See how you've gone.
Hey, I look forward to seeing you here on the beach.
Yeah, well, that'd be nice. So I'm going to hand over to Ben now, and he's going to handle the questions. So over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, Ben.
And, hey, Walt. How you doing?
Good, man.
Thanks. I've actually got a few questions that have been coming in while you've been chatting away there. So I'll get straight into it. I've got a few about Ho Tram, but actually, first of all, I've got a few related to what you were discussing earlier. So first question is, what would be a good rule of thumb to follow for a spread of betting limits?
Again, as Andrew mentioned, I don't. First of all, my answer is I don't believe in spreading limits. Your maximum bet is dictated by your risk and your appetite for volatility. Your minimum bet is simply to spread out the tables. Some players that are betting a little bit bigger may want to play by themselves. So maybe you have some higher minimum bets to kind of keep the people that are betting lower away from that table. If I can just quickly, in Macau, you might have 3 players all betting 50,000 a hand, or let's in U.S. dollars or Hong Kong dollars, let's say 50,000 Hong Kong, and one guy wants to be on the main floor being a big shot. One guy wants to be in a room full of other guys betting 50,000 because he wants to do business with them. And one guy wants to be by himself in a VIP room betting 50,000. So it's, again, the idea that the market's not homogenous, different people have different needs, and looking for in different benefits will serve those needs.
Actually got a really good question given the current situation with COVID around the world. What about maximum bets on tables now that seating capacity is to be reduced in a lot of places, probably 3 or 4 players per table? Does it therefore make sense to raise max betting limits, and what sort of level should we be looking at there? I guess that's property dependent, but
yeah. Again, it would depend on how big the company is, how much cash they have in the cage. Now, if I would really say to you that the opposite would be true. If it's consistent that you have the same money in the cage, you have the players betting the same amount, and you have less players, yes, you will have less win, but you'll also have more volatility. And it's the volatility that drives the max bet, not the expected win. So I would go the opposite. But if you're in that range, like I said, players going to come in, beat you 40 times the max bet. Just do that calculation, quickly look how much money you have in the cage, and make that decision.
What about the minimum bet? I think I said maximum bet before.
Oh, minimum bet. Yeah, it's the pit boss should be empowered, and then maybe that's one thing that paradigm. The pit boss should be empowered to make that decision and to move the minimum bets up or down depending on how many players, what the density of players are on that casino floor. And if he's not doing it, then he's not doing his job, because that is exactly what his job is, to manage that pit.
What sort of bet spreads do you have at Ho Tram?
Our maximum bet is 10,000 US on the max floor. It's higher in our junket room, but our minimum bets, they can go down as low as 25. Most of them are 50 to 100.
Okay, a couple of questions now, particularly about Ho Tram. A few things you touched on, Walt, but just looking back in time a little bit, some people here would be aware of Ho Tram's interesting history. What do you believe has held Ho Tram back in the past from fulfilling its potential?
Well, to be quite frank, Ho Tram is an Asian casino in Asia, and I look at as a comparison. I go back to the early Sands days when myself and my partner Dennis Andriachi opened up the Sands. And we both had a lot of experience in Asia. He actually had more experience than I did. I had 3 years in Subic Bay working with the Chinese market. And as we did a lot of research at the SGM casinos. We did a lot of work with the different markets, such as the gaming ships, Cambodia, Phoi Phet, et cetera, Genting Highlands. And during this process, a team came in from Las Vegas, a casino operations team came in from Las Vegas, thinking, I think they never spoke it, they never said it, but they thought they were the kings of the casino world because they came from Vegas. Well, guess what? They weren't. They might have been the kings of Vegas, but they weren't the kings of Macau. So I think what has held Ho Tram back historically is to have a team that has a tremendous amount of Asian gaming experience, Macau gaming experience, Singapore gaming experience, Cambodia, etc. That's the key. I'm a person, even though I mentioned the term the right stuff, I'm not a person that believes in natural talent. I believe the more you do something, the better you are at it. Going back to my flying days, I was a functional test pilot and an evaluator, so I would give check rides to other pilots. And never once did I find a pilot with 500 flight hours that was better than a pilot with 1,000 flight hours. And I never met a pilot with 1,000 flight hours that was better than a guy with 2,000 hours. The more you did it, the better you get. So it's the same thing for managing an Asian casino. The more experience you have, the better results there'll be.
Looking at Ho Tram specifically, Walter, what do you think Ho Tram's potential competitive advantages over other locations around Asia?
Well, first of all, being on the beach helps. Being a big integrated resort, we're not only a casino, but we're also integrated resort. We're focusing on MICE, family destinations, individual travelers. things of that nature. The place was designed or developed by MGM. I think Paul Steelman in combination with MGM were the guys that built this place. So it is a Macau-styled casino on the beach in southern Vietnam. The closest casino with live table games would be in the island of Phu Quoc, and then soon to be the casino in Da Nang at Hoi An. But there's a big difference between the distance between Da Nang and Ho Chi Minh and Phu Quoc. And Ho Chi Minh has a population of 10 million people. Yes, locals can't gamble here at this current stage, but the 10 million has supported a big expat population, and that's what we can exploit.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the property Corona down in Phu Quoc, and obviously Hoi An opening next year. Do you see them as direct competition, or is the distance make that a moot point?
I don't see them as direct competition. I think, all the folks that run these things, whether it's in Macau, Singapore, or Vietnam, we're all type A personalities and pretty competitive in nature. So there's good natured competition. But what do I want? I want everybody to be successful. Just like when I was in Macau, I want everybody to be successful. The saying, rising tides floats all boats. That's my philosophy.
You mentioned that you're not relying on locals gaming at Ho Tram, Walt. But do you expect that one day locals might become a reality for you? Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility. There's a beta test going on at Phu Quoc as we speak. I think they're 1 year into a three-year test, but I'm not counting on that to be successful. I believe we can be successful just with a more effective penetration of the expat market, and if the locals comes, then it'll be icing on the cake as opposed to cake itself.
I've got here's an interesting question that just came in actually for you, Walt. What is the most, typical perks that patrons ask for after winning or losing? I guess we're talking about high rollers here. Does it vary in different markets? And if so, which clients do we need to be focused on in different markets? That's a bit of a complicated question for you, but
yeah. There's like I said, it's not homogenous. There's challenging, demanding players, and there are players that are happy with a hamburger. So so far so good. I've never, in my 28 years, I've never been asked for something that I either couldn't tell them, sorry, we can't do that, or was able to comply with that request because it was within the scope of our marketing program.
When you mentioned before, Walt, that there's a fair population in Ho Chi Minh City of CEOs and expats that have come in and living there, and that's your target market, really. Does that mean that you're primarily targeting a more premium customer, or is there an opportunity for your grind mass sort of guy as well?
Yeah, that's if you look into, if you came last Saturday or this weekend, you're going to see what looks very like premium mass casino in Macau. There'll be guys betting. There's a range because our minimum bet can be $100 on the weekend, but most of our players will be betting between $500 US and $2,000 US. Now that's a solid premium mass player in Macau, whether it's a Venetian or Encore at Wynn or choose your poison.
Any questions from you, Andrew?
Okay, yeah. I was waiting for you to run dry. So it looks like you have. Yeah. So obviously you can't share facts and figures and information, but just very generally for the people around to give a sense, is there any metric you can give that would be something kind of vague, but at least would give us a sense of how busy you are down there? I remember the first time I ever went down there, it was dead. There was absolutely no one there. Are you getting, can you give us a rough head count of what you get on a Friday night or something like that? Or is there any, just to give people a sense of how empty it is?
Well, I think I can answer that question now. I'm going to have to give you a confidential answer. You have to promise not to tell anybody with this. So okay. I've been here 3.5 months and I haven't been fired yet.
Okay, that's the best we can do. We'll have to go down there ourselves and.
For sure, man. Again, I see many friends on this stream. You're all welcome. Just give me a shout.
That's great. Hey, I just want to, so one of the things that we are trying to do with, we just want to make a couple of comments about this platform, the GAME platform. It was created in the great big rush, as I think most people know, and we're trying to continue to progress it on. The website's been a bit quiet because we've been focused on a few other things, but actually we're eventually planning to turn the website into having a proper member login where you go in, there's a profile of you and members can speak to each other, almost like I hesitate to say Facebook, but I'm going to say Facebook, or a LinkedIn for the Asian gaming industry. So we're working on that, and we will get there eventually on that. So please bear with us. And our goal eventually is to have a different guest every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Macau time. We're not quite running it at weekly at the moment. The next guest might be next Tuesday or might be the Tuesday following. But our goal eventually is to, this time seems to work for people, Tuesdays at 5 p.m. So our goal is to get one every week in the future so people can put it into their diaries and lock it in, and to have a good range of guests too, different sorts of people from different parts of the industry at different kind of levels. There's been quite a few people who've come to us and said, oh, you should make it longer. Not one person has said, can you make it shorter? So you know what I'm going to say. Put up your poll, Victoria. We're going to run a little poll now. We're trying to stick to 40 minutes at the moment because there's nothing worse than one of these educational things that goes too long and is too boring. So I erred on the side of short rather than long, but we just want to ask you, do you think it should go 40 minutes, which is what it's meant to go at the moment, 50 minutes or 60 minutes? So just throw an answer in there. And Victoria, let's just give everyone 30 seconds or so to vote. Let's see how that comes through. And while you're doing that, I'll just remind you that straight after this event, Victoria will send out a link to the post-event feedback form, and we'd really appreciate it if you get. Well, there you go, Victoria. Just put it on the put it in the chat box. If you'd fill out the feedback form so that we can make some decisions on that sort of thing, and future guests as well. We are keeping all the future guest suggestions and going through and trying to go through. Just give us a little bit of time, and we aim to keep this consistently free for members. So let's have a look. Well, that's interesting. Exactly split 33, 33, 33. So it looks like maybe we should make it 50 minutes. We might run that poll again next time and see how it goes. So we've hit the end of our time, and I think that's it. We've done the poll wrap up. So look out for the feedback form. Thank you all for being here. And the next one, we'll announce it in the next few days, and it may be Tuesday next week, or it may be the following week. We're not sure yet. We're still waiting on our guests. So thank you everyone for being here, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye now.